And there's an effort happening right now in our tech sector, part of Oregon's so-called Silicon Forest. It's our big story tonight. That same State of the Economy report shows the region's GDP recovery, or gross domestic product, a measure of economic activity, is aided in part by the growth in tech. But it's not all rosy. Manufacturers had an off year in 2023 as consumers shifted away from pandemic buying. And the information decline is mostly due to tech layoffs, a trend seen here at home and around the country. In fact, a computer chip company in Gresham has 2-week furloughs coming next month and possibly again in June after a brutal fourth quarter of 2023. Sales down 22% from the quarter before. But despite all of those bumps in the road, the semiconductor industry is still full steam ahead, spurred on by the big state and federal dollars meant to boost chip manufacturing in the U.S. as opposed to relying on chip makers overseas. And Oregon's chip industry is working hard to get more skilled workers into its pipeline. One way is partnering with Portland Community College. We recently attended the graduation of a free 2-week program that teaches students the basics on fixing chip machines, as Pat Doris explains.
In a classroom at Portland Community College's Willow Creek campus, parts of high-tech machines used to create silicon chips sit quiet now. But over the last 2 weeks, they revealed secrets to students. Secrets about how they work and how they could be fixed. For some, like Kira Rodak, it unlocked a door to the future.
I heard about it. I was previously working retail and wanted to move into more of a manufacturing industry.
She was intimidated at first, but then saw past her fear.
I would really recommend it. I was definitely nervous going into it and coming in and working with hand tools and being like, I don't know what I'm doing. But having other people there who also didn't know what they were doing and getting to learn together, I think it's a great opportunity, and it's not as intimidating as it sounds.
Kira is one of a group of students here finishing a 2-week free program called Quick Start. It teaches the basics of fixing the machines that create those silicon chips. Instructor Steve Dufresne says Moore's Law, which says the speed and capability of computers can double every 2 years, well, that's still driving change and the need for workers who can fix these machines.
It's resulted in the tools getting more and more complex. So how we have to work on this, the types of techniques that are being used are getting harder. And that means the tools are getting bigger. And as the tools get bigger, they need more maintenance. And that means more jobs for people to do that maintenance. So it's not a field that's going away.
The class is a collaboration between Intel and the city of Hillsborough, Washington County, and the state of Oregon. PCC's president, Adrian Bennings, says it's a great opportunity.
Some of the things that I really value about the program is that they not only have the opportunity to participate in a 2-week program offering a $1,000 stipend, but also having a pathway to either going on into the workforce, having an entry-level interview with the local employer, or also continuing their education through our associate's degree program, microelectronics, or our 1-year certificate program. So I ground this all in terms of 2 words, impact and opportunity. That's what today means.
Jesus Zavala is another graduate who ended up here because of a caring brother.
Mainly, my brother put me in this place because he thought it was a great opportunity, and he's right. It is a great opportunity to learn something that you're passionate about, which I am.
He said he loved learning about hydraulics and pneumatics and everything else the machines had to offer. He sees the knowledge as a ticket to a better life.
Oh, it's life-changing. It's probably one of the best things that happened the past few years because I'm from a poor background and I didn't have the chance to go to college. And this place will make my life way easier.
Intel has hired 111 people from the Quick Start courses so far. Diane Vidmantis is the Director of Business Operations for the Tech Development Division at Intel. She says this program is a win-win because without the people who keep Intel's equipment running, there would be no future here.
They are really the lifeblood of our factory. They work on our equipment and make sure they are humming along creating our chips. And without that locally, we wouldn't have a factory here.
Now let's talk about power bills. They're certainly not going down anytime soon. PGE customers have been through nearly 2 billing cycles since the utility increased rates by 18% at the beginning of the year. But for you Pacific Power customers, the 800,000 households in Washington, Oregon, and California, get ready because you're next. This month, the utility filed for a rate increase of 16.9%. If approved by the Oregon Public Utility Commission, it would take effect in 2025. The company says the average residential customer would see an increase of nearly $30 per month. They say the $304 million generated from the increase would go towards wildfire risk management, transmission infrastructure, and renewable energy projects. Those wildfire expenses would be things like vegetation management around power lines, paying higher wildfire insurance premiums, and creating a so-called catastrophic fire fund, another tool to manage wildfire risks. Now, some of you may be thinking, hold on, wasn't Pacific Power just found responsible for some of the Labor Day wildfires in 2020? And are we now paying the price for that? It is true that Pacific Power will likely end up being forced to pay hundreds of millions of dollars in wildfire liability, but the company is not unilaterally allowed to raise rates to pay for that. Months ago, Pacific Power filed to open the door to this possibility down the line, but it was immediately met with a challenge from an advocacy group and ratepayers alike. Here's Mike Getz with the Oregon Citizens Utility Board, who I talked to at the time, saying Pacific Corp should not be allowed to pass wildfire lawsuit costs on to customers.
There is the, I'll say, slim potential for those costs to be included in customer rates, which would put upward pressure on customers' bills. But again, we're fighting that proceeding, and we don't think that there's precedent for those types of costs to be included in rates. And we're optimistic that the commission will deny cost recovery when the company comes in and requests it.
Now, that doesn't mean the company can't raise rates for other wildfire-related things, and that's what we're talking about here. Any rate increase so far is not set in stone just yet. The Oregon Public Utility Commission will take a look at Pacific Power's filings, and of course, the Oregon Citizens Utility Board will be looking at the documents as well to try and blunt that increase as much as possible. When it comes to wildfire mitigation costs, there's going to be a detailed look at what's prevention and what's reaction. For its part, Pacific Power's VP of Regulatory Policy and Operations wrote, while our essential operating costs remain low, extreme weather events and increased wildfire risks are impacting all households and businesses, raising the costs of providing our essential services. Now it's your time to chime in. These rate increases feel more and more common lately. Do you just grit your teeth and deal with it? Are you understanding? Are you looking for alternative sources of power? Let us know. Email the story at kgw.com. or call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. Now let's turn to Oregon's drug crisis. New federal data shows fentanyl overdose deaths grew by 1,500% between late 2018 and 2023, just the last 5 years. Yes, 1,500%. I'll say it again. 77 deadly fentanyl overdoses in 2018 to 19, up to 1,268 between 2022 and 2023, by far the largest increase in the nation. As the state's largest city, Portland is home to plenty of those drug deaths, and there are hot spots downtown where drug activity flourishes. Portland police often find themselves playing whack-a-mole, with one dealer being quickly replaced by another. The latest spot is along a single block of Southwest Portland, around 10th and Jefferson. In the last 2 weeks, officers have arrested nearly a dozen suspected fentanyl dealers. But as Blair Best reports, the problem persists.
Take it first. Keith is good at preventing pain.
Moving and helping everybody clean up.
She's getting a head start on moving. This group was just told the city's camp removal team is heading their way.
Well, I guess.
Keith does this alongside her other routine.
I use fentanyl and meth. The high of it lasts for like 5 minutes and then it repeats and it doesn't end. It's the same thing over and over again.
Across the street is a different side of that cycle.
This is kind of our normal. We're doing what we can.
Portland police saw this man smoking fentanyl on the sidewalk. They arrested him on outstanding warrants. For the past several weeks, police have targeted these blocks around Southwest Jefferson Street and 10th Avenue. In the last 2, they've arrested 10 suspected fentanyl dealers there.
There are days where it feels like drinking through a garden hose. I mean, we're arresting drug dealers at night as fast as we can, and it seems like we'll arrest someone and within, 30 minutes there's somebody else back out.
Stephanie, who lives nearby,
but yeah, here's the view from my window.
Also sees it daily.
It's every day, it's every night.
The amount of drug use happening right outside her window means she spends most of her time indoors and is planning to leave Portland.
When I get off work, I just come home and I stay home. It just doesn't feel safe anymore at all.
Even with a strong police presence, she says it never ends.
I have empathy for, people who have addiction issues or who have mental health issues. I don't think the current solution is working for anybody.
People don't have real consequences for their actions here, so I feel like that might contribute as to why people will keep staying in this vicious cycle.
Now, Portland police say they're doing everything they can, and they will continue to try and be unpredictable in night and weekend missions to stop fentanyl dealers. That's their focus, to stop the sale of drugs, because under Oregon law, that is a felony crime. Meanwhile, lawmakers are continuing to debate whether or not to change rules around using drugs in public, because that is not a crime. And Portland police say they will continue to try and connect drug users who are willing with addiction services, if those services are available. In Southwest Portland, Blair Best, KGW News.
Thank you, Blair. Up next on The Story, Portland's Albina neighborhood was once home to the vast majority of Black Portlanders, but decades of urban policy and gentrification have crippled the once thriving community. There are efforts to revitalize the area, including a lawsuit that was recently allowed to move forward against the city and a major hospital system. We'll explore the past, present, and future of Albina when The Story returns. In honor of Black History Month, we wanted to take a moment to talk about Portland's Albina neighborhood. If you've lived in the area for a while, you likely know at least parts of this story. And if you're new to the area, it's a story that you should know. The Albina neighborhood of inner northeast Portland was once a prosperous area where Black Portlanders thrived. But through decades of urban renewal policies and the use of things like eminent domain, the community is not the same as what it used to be. KGW digital reporter Sabina Pierre has been working on an overview of Albina for weeks now. The past, the present, and the future of a community pushing to restore and heal.
The Albina neighborhood has been historically marginalized and overlooked, and for years there have been efforts to bring back the community to what it once was. If you're not familiar with Albina's story, we're taking a look back at an issue that KGW has been covering for decades.
Albina is not just a physical place, but it's also a spiritual and communal home for the Black community of the city of Portland.
Portland's Albina community was once a flourishing space that a majority of Black Portlanders thrived in. Rooted in a rich history with many Black-owned businesses, churches, and even a popular jazz venue called the Cotton Club in North Portland.
This is a place that was once home to over 80% of the Black population of the city of Portland.
The Albina neighborhood is located in a portion of inner northeast Portland. It includes Elliott, Boise, King, Humboldt, Overlook, Irvington, and Piedmont neighborhoods. Albina was historically marginalized and overlooked with decades of aggressions. Residents were displaced by construction projects, Interstate 5, built over the lower area of the neighborhood, and Memorial Coliseum in the 60s.
And that remains the cultural hub of Blackness here in the city, despite decades of gentrification, of forced displacement that have pushed Black folks in particular further and further east, further and further out of our central city.
Black-owned homes and businesses were destroyed through eminent domain and urban renewal policies.
When we had to move, we lost our home, we lost our church, my dad lost his business, he was a barber, and we lost our community.
The most notable was the Legacy Emanuel expansion into Albina in 1970, and then the 1993 Albina Community Plan, which displaced hundreds of residents. The community was hit hard by redlining, policies, and development that drove out and financially hurt many people of color. In 2022, descendants and surviving Black Portlanders who were forced out of their homes in the Central Albina District in the 1960s and 70s filed a lawsuit against the city of Portland, as well as Legacy Emanuel. In December, a judge ruled that the lawsuit can proceed.
If Black people can't find a home in the heart of our most progressive city, the economic and cultural hub of our state, where are we meant to find a home?
Groups and organizations such as Albina Music Trust and the Albina Vision Trust have continuously worked to advocate, revitalize, and reconnect the historically Black Albina community. Last year, Albina Vision Trust celebrated the groundbreaking of Albina 1. It's the first major project under the Albina Vision banner, a 94-unit affordable housing development in the Elliott neighborhood. The first families are expecting to move in around the summer of 2025. The group also gained approval from the Portland Public School Board to purchase the district's administrative headquarters. That was another construction project that displaced hundreds of Black families in Lower Albina. They aim to build 1,000 units of housing in its place. Decades of rich history with both positive and negative impacts on a community pushing to restore and heal.
We're gonna have to band together, we're gonna have to do that work ourselves. The Portland of tomorrow is a Portland for everybody. The Albina of tomorrow is an Albina for everybody, and the Oregon of tomorrow is an Oregon for everybody.
In April of last year, Nike co-founder Phil Knight and his wife Penny announced a $400 million investment for the area called the Rebuild Albina Project. The idea is to support current and future generations of Black Portlanders through investments in education and culture. Now, with developments such as the Albina 1 housing project and the lawsuit from the Albina descendants proceeding, there's a resurgence of hope for the neighborhood's restoration. Sabina Pierre, KGW News.
We'd love to hear your thoughts or memories of the Albina neighborhood. Maybe you know someone that lives there who's seen many of the changes throughout the years and decades. Let us know. Share your stories. Email the story at kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail 503-226-5090. Still to come on our show here tonight, a special President's Day edition of Digging for Old. We'll explore the origins of the holiday and tell you why President's Day doesn't even appear as a phrase in the federal law books. It was born out of an ad campaign. So what is the holiday officially called? Details when the story returns. Many of you may have had the day off of work today. Your children or grandchildren got a day off from school. Banks were closed along with the New York Stock Exchange. Well, that's President's Day. But did you know that that term does not exist in federal law? The name was basically created for ad campaigns. And Pat Doris explains the origins of this federal holiday, officially called Washington's birthday.
For the first 2 decades of his life, George Washington celebrated his birthday on February 11th. It is the day, after all, that he was born, in 1731. But the date of his birthday moved in 1752. That's when British Parliament adopted the newer Gregorian calendar. It shifted Washington's date of birth from February 11th to February 22nd. And in the years that followed, Washington's legend grew. He led the Continental Army during the American Revolutionary War. He served 2 terms as the fledgling country's first president. For that and more, Washington was routinely celebrated around the country. But we can't talk about his accomplishments without mentioning his not-so-noble behaviors. Washington owned slaves on his Mount Vernon plantation. More on that another day. Following his death in 1799, Americans celebrated Washington's February 22nd birthday informally for decades. In 1879, it became a federal holiday. Congress officially designated the 22nd day of the second month of the year a holiday for all federal workers. And every year since 1896, the U.S. Senate selects a member to read Washington's farewell address. It happens around February 22nd. The name President's Day was proposed to replace Washington's birthday in 1951, but it didn't happen then and has not changed since. Then, in 1968, Congress passed the Uniform Monday Holiday Act. It designated certain holidays like Washington's birthday, Labor Day, and Memorial Day to be observed on Mondays. The reason? To give federal employees more 3-day weekends. The thinking was it would be good for business and the economy. The law took effect in 1971, and oh boy, did the deals start flying for cars, mattresses, and appliances. Okay, maybe not really. The new law combined Washington and Lincoln's birthday observances and moved them to the 3rd Monday in February. Because of that, we've not actually celebrated Washington's birthday on his real birthday in more than 50 years. The rise of the term President's Day began thanks to advertising campaigns in the 1980s. They celebrated the office of the presidency rather than just Washington or Lincoln. And that brings us to today, where the only drama surrounding all of this is in the area of punctuation marks. The whole focus is on that word, presidents. Is there no apostrophe? Does it go between the T and the S? Does it go after the S? The answer? Kinda depends. The Associated Press says no apostrophe, but more than a dozen states use the singular possessive, putting it between the T and the S, including the state of Oregon. Many others use the plural possessive, putting it after the S, including the state of Washington. That reflects that the holiday is meant to honor George Washington and Lincoln. But that apostrophe drama matters not to the federal government. Check out the federal law books, Title V, Part 3, Subpart E, Chapter 61, Subchapter 1, Code 6103. There's no such thing as President's Day. It's just Washington's birthday.
I could listen to Pat just read through law citations all day long. We went looking through the Oregon Historical Society's online collection for anything George Washington related, considering the holiday. We stumbled on this piece that many of you will recognize, a Purple Heart. It features the bronze-toned bust of Washington. This Purple Heart was given to an Oregonian named Ross Reed in 1932 after he evaded machine gun fire to save a comrade entangled in barbed wire during World War I. Now, for any history buffs here, those years don't quite line up. World War I and 1932, of course, but there's a reason. Washington is prominently featured on the Purple Heart because he created the foundation for the military award all the way back in 1782. Back then, it was called the Badge of Military Merit, meant to recognize heroic acts by soldiers during the Revolutionary War. This is one of those patches. It would have originally been purple cloth with the word merit stitched across the front. No one knows how many soldiers actually received the Badge of Military Merit, but it could be as few as 3. The book with recipients' names has been lost for more than 200 years. After the Revolutionary War, Washington's order that created the award lapsed. The Purple Heart was not revived until 1932 on Washington's 200th birthday. It was made retroactive meaning World War I veterans who earned certain awards could apply for the Purple Heart. And that's why Ross Reed waited well over a decade following his service in World War I to be honored with his Purple Heart. Thank you very much for joining us tonight on this Monday, on this holiday. That is the end of our show. Thanks a lot for watching. The good stuff is coming your way next. I hope you stick around for the late news at 11 o'clock, and I'll be with you tomorrow night as well, right here on This Story. Have a great one.